What's up, everybody, and welcome to JFK Book Reviews. I'm but one of your hosts, Triple B, Big Bad Bob, along with Joe Borelli, as usual. Today, we're going to be starting a new series doing JFK-related book reviews. And the first one we're going to do is Presumed Guilty by Howard Roffman. Now, this book here was published in 1976 by A.S. Barnes and Company out of Cranberry, New Jersey, clocking in at 300 pages, 9 chapters, 3 sections, 6 appendices, an index, sources, a bibliography, conclusion, all kinds of good stuff in here. Now, the author, Howard Roffman, was a relatively young buck. At the time this book was published, Joe, he was only 23 years old. Can you believe that?
I can't.
He was born and raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. His interest in the assassination began at the tender age of 14, Joe. And by 11th grade, he had saved up money and managed to buy every volume of the Warren Commission report, all 26 volumes. He would also go to the National Archives and study there. And he was the youngest researcher to ever do so. And while there, he would make friends with people like Harold Weisberg and Vince Salandria. Alarmed at what he discovered, he says, "I can't think of anything more threatening than when the government lies about the murder of its leader." He completed his understudies as a history major at the University of Pennsylvania, graduated with honors in 1974, and at the time his book was published, he was attending the Holland Law Center in Gainesville, Florida, and he is also the author of a second book that he wrote called Understanding the Cold War, which at my age, I still don't understand. So, a very interesting book to start us off, Joe. That's Presumed Guilty by Howard Roffman.
Yes, for sure. And what did the author hope to achieve in this book? Well, luckily, he stated his goals in the introduction. To set the record straight is the purpose of this book. Here, I present documented proof of 2 points essential to any understanding of the assassination and its official investigation. Number 1, Lee Harvey Oswald did not fire any shots in the assassination. Number 2, the Warren Commission considered no possibility other than that Oswald was the lone assassin and consciously endeavored to fabricate a case against Oswald. So in the introduction, he kind of starts it off. He details the timeline of the Warren Commission, starting with early correspondence from J. Lee Rankin, and quotes other conversations in private sessions between members of the commission. He then discusses the public's initial acceptance of the Warren Commission's findings, and then details the early criticisms and publications that started to come out at the end of 1965 by first-generation researchers. He felt that Garrison's investigation hindered earlier progress made by researchers with his unethical behavior and conspiracy theories, resulting in bad press and leaving the public and media more suspicious of Warren Commission criticism. He thought that books about conspiracy only are somewhat counterproductive. I can only imagine what he thinks today, Rob. The book has 3 major sections. Part 1 deals solely with the evidence alleged to prove Oswald's guilt, and without taking a stance on the evidence, he criticizes the narrow focus of the FBI, the Dallas Police Department, and the Warren Commission's investigations, because they only fixated on one subject, which is, of course, Lee Harvey Oswald. Part 2 is titled Suppressed Spectrography, which I had to look up the meaning of. It's a study that includes physics, material science, and chemistry. He methodically and in incredible detail dismantles the ballistic and medical evidence. One thing I found fascinating was how the Atomic Energy Commission offered as a third party to analyze the ballistic evidence using a process called neuron activation analysis, which probably could have settled any doubts on if the fragments found in the presidential limo and in JFK came from the rifle found on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository. Hoover J. Edgar Hoover, not surprisingly, did not accept their offer to help and was satisfied with the incomplete analysis of his agent's tests. Part 3 goes through the rifle found in the building. Was Oswald out the window? Oswald's alibi and actions after the shots, and Oswald's rifle capability, which I know we have talked about on the show many times. The book is incredibly well written. Well, I had to go to the dictionary a couple times to look up the definition of a couple words. Author does a great job of laying out the facts of the case and successfully articulates the problems with the evidence and how the investigation could have been done differently. I could tell it was written by a lawyer by the way he methodically tears apart the logic and reasoning that the Warren Commission used to make their conclusions. So how did he source his evidence? Because, of course, that is very important. The author used primary sourced evidence from the Warren Commission. As you mentioned, went to the National Archives himself to research, referred to news articles of the time, and quoted books like Accessories After the Fact by Sylvia Marr and Whitewash by Harold Weisberg. 6 appendices, A through F, which includes memorandums of letters from lead counsel J. Lee Rankin to other Warren Commission lawyers and FBI reports. So, Rob, what are your thoughts on the book and your rating, please?
Yes, Joe. Well, we were talking about this book on the show recently. It just happened to come up and figured to make a good first book because a lot of people never heard of this book. And I think I surprised you and a lot of other people by saying that this book is probably in my top 5 all-time Kennedy assassination books. And it may seem weird, but once you read it, you'll understand what I mean. He has a very no-nonsense approach with his book. The way he analyzes his evidence and supports it is top-notch. He wrote this book at a time where there were not many conspiracy-leaning books coming out on the case. This was, of course, pre-HSCA when everything got kicked off again in the late 70s and early 80s. But more surprising to me is in this genre of book or subject matter, for Howard Roffman, it was a one and done. He would never return to the subject matter again or be involved in any Kennedy assassination research. I don't believe ever again. So pretty fascinating. But given my reaction to everything, Big Bad Bob is going to give this book a whopping generous 9 guns up, Joe. Bang, 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 bang. 9 guns up. What was your impressions of the book, sir?
Well, this is not a book about JFK whodidit conspiracies. Mr. Roffman had 2 goals of the book, which I mentioned earlier, and I think he successfully accomplished both those goals. I think the 3rd goal, not stated, was he was supporting a movement to a new investigation. And he said, but the vital question now concerns what should be investigated. A congressional reopening of the case should focus on those areas which will yield meaningful findings and serve a constructive national purpose. And the HSCA was established only months after this book. So I definitely think he helped in that effort to bring about a new investigation. And despite the book being 50 years old, I learned a lot of new things. So considering his stated goals, the time the book was written, the evidence that was available at the time, I think he was extremely effective and thorough in every argument he made. And I give this book, and I didn't know your rating before, also a 9 out of 10. 9 guns up.
Sweet. Thank you for that, Joe. And if you enjoyed our little book review here, be on the lookout for these every week. You can also check out our show, our podcast that we do live every Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube. Check out our channel. Make sure to subscribe and get notified when we drop. Thank you, folks. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.